Hey everyone, so I've been trying to get a video out every week and I missed last week. So I'm going to combine last week's and this week's hunt all together in one video. Got some things I want to talk about with it. Really, it's been a good season for me this year, although not till the last day of archery did I get some meat in the freezer. But I really measure a good season by just seeing deer, being in the right areas. Maybe you don't get that shot at a nice buck, but if you're seeing deer, it's always much better than seeing no deer whatsoever. Before I get into any of that, I do want to tell you, if you want to keep up with what's going on with my hunts and that, I did get an Instagram account put up so you can kind of follow me there and not have to wait for my videos. Okay, so let's hop into how 2 weekends ago, how my hunting went. Now I got out and sat for my Saturday evening hunt like I typically do. And just kind of ironically, I happened to, make sure I have my tree umbrella with me. And it just so happens that I had a nice heavy shower just come over. It rained for about 4 or 5 minutes, a nice downpour on top of me. Now something I think I like about a nice heavy downpour right in that afternoon time, I think it gets the deer up out of their beds a little bit earlier if it's just 2 hours before sunset. And that can help you see a few more deer, but you already have to be in your stand with that. I have one of those tree umbrellas, and sometimes if it's just a chance of rain, I'll always have that in my stand and set up just for such an occasion. And it wasn't long after the rain stopped that I had some deer moving into the area. Here, I just got a button buck, and of course he came crossing, probably about 35 yards out, and always going under that halakha holly that had fallen over this year. I've mentioned these hollies a number of times, and there's about 3 good sized ones out in front of where my stand is, and almost all these deer go by at least one of them as they're crossing through the area. Here the button buck is underneath it, just browsing around at the lower hanging leaves. Since this was pretty much like a 40-foot tree that had fallen over just this summer, it's full of fresh browse that hasn't been picked over, and lots of the berries. That button buck moved off, continued to the left, and then I had 2 more deer come in pretty much from the same direction he did. Once again, they just got up a little early, started moving out of their beds. These came in left to right, but eventually they made their way back right to left across and followed that button buck on its way out again. Now, I did a hunt Sunday morning as well, and that was a complete bust. So I stayed out in my stand till, probably about 11:30 I think it was. I stayed out that late because there was, the moon phase had a feed set up for late morning like that, and I figured I'd stay, hang out, and see if things were moving around. It was the first sit in which I hadn't seen at least one deer, so I was due to have a day of just not seeing anything. And, but I can't complain. So many other days I've seen 4 or 5 deer in a sit. So, a little disappointing, but, you got to take the good days with the bad. So the next weekend, I got out for another Saturday evening hunt, like I always did. Except this day, I decided I was going to get out there a little earlier. Now, a lot of people talk about the moon phase and how this can affect deer and other animals' movement. And, I don't know if I'd like live by it 100%, but I kind of do watch it, at least watch it around the times when deer are going to possibly move anyway. And, I'll talk about this a little more, but there was a major feed that was supposed to go from like 3:30 to 5:30 on this Saturday. And although I didn't get out to my stand as early as I wanted to, I was out there and set up by about 4 o'clock. And it wasn't long before, things started moving around me. And I'll show you a little bit of that in my videos here. So the first thing that started moving on this Saturday was actually a pair of raccoons. It was only about 4:45, and as you can see, the sunlight is still on the forest floor. So I was really surprised to see these raccoons out so early. Probably about 15 minutes behind them is when I had the first deer show up. Once again, still, the sunlight's on the forest floor. This was a lot earlier than I had been seeing these deer in this area. Probably about an hour earlier. Now, once again, was that because of the moon? Who knows? I think it does, kind of, maybe it's not going to trigger them to move 200 or 300 yards, but it's going to at least get them up out of their beds to move 20 or 30 yards. And if you're already in that close to evening time, I think you're going to get a little bit more early movement. They'll get a little head start on working their way out of their beds. This evening, with that early start, I had seen 6 deer from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Some of them came moving in. This is a little doe, came walking right in towards me. And then a little bit after that, a second doe came in from the same direction. And here in a little bit, you're going to see both of them come into fairly close range of where I'm standing. Now, I don't know if it was maybe a glare or reflection off my glasses. One of the downfalls of not having perfect vision is having to wear glasses. It can give you away. But both the deer kind of took a little bit of a very precautionary, observing stance, standing out in front of me. There was a little bit of, crinkling of sticks and leaves off to my left. And it turns out this nice little 4-point buck came in. He never really got within 40 or 50 yards, but he moved across the top of the area where I was at. And eventually the doe took a little bit of interest and followed up in the way he came. Those 3 eventually made their way out, actually coming back around on my left side. And about 15-20 minutes later, 2 more came strolling across left to right, working through the area. Once again, there's a couple Palaka holly trees up in front on my right side, and they just cruised along those as well. So that was pretty much what I saw for that evening. I did hop out of my stand a little early. I didn't, all the deer had moved off and really wasn't hearing anything else, and I didn't want to wait into that twilight time when it's hard to really see those distances out away from you, and you don't know if a deer's moved in and is looking at you and is going to bust you coming out of your stand. So with only about 15 minutes of shooting light left, not hearing anything, seeing anything, I called it early to get out of there, so I didn't really bust any deer out as I was leaving. So Sunday morning, nothing too much very early, but around 7:30, got the doe came moving in from my left side. And this being the last day of archery is going to be the last day I could shoot a doe, so if anything presented a shot, I was going to take a shot at it. This one, of course, went under the holly bush as usual, and it kind of worked its way back out in front of me, but it was always behind this group of bushes as it made its way almost directly towards me. So as that one was setting up in front of me, another doe came out from the same direction, crossing under that holly bush, and went under it. After about 5 or 6 minutes, eventually that first doe started making its way back out from those the bushes. Most of the time it was either heading towards me or away from me, but it was right in that 20-yard range right there. So the second doe that was under the holly eventually left that area, and actually lost sight of her once after she went behind the trees, because I started keeping an eye on that first doe, which also crossed under the holly and started coming out and around for me. I knew when it was passing behind that group of trees, I was going to have the opportunity to draw back on it and be ready for it to pop out on the other side. I have to say, I was certainly surprised when I went to look at the footage and to see that I wasn't blocking the camera. So that was really great. Here's a little frame by frame from the arrow release. Well, I hope you all got something out of the videos. Hope you enjoyed some of the footage I was able to capture. Archery season's kind of, closed down. I may get out for maybe 1 or 2 hunts of muzzle loading, then we're going to end up into general gun. I do have a permit for Charles Bronson general gun this year. I'm going to take advantage of that, and I'll put up some separate videos on some of the scouting and that I'm going to do out at Charles Bronson. They got some really nice deer, and because it's a permit area, you get a little more opportunity at seeing some bigger bucks out there. I'll put some cameras out, hopefully have some footage for you. But until next time, get out there, do some of your own hunts. Put some questions up if you guys have any questions, and I'll try and answer them for y'all. Take it easy.